Good morning, Chairman Cohen, Vice Chair Ross, Ranking Member Johnson, and members of the committee. You've convened an important hearing today because it is the first congressional hearing to examine the civil rights of communities most directly impacted by post-9/11 national security policies and discrimination. For my community, it comes nearly 36 years after another historic hearing of the House Judiciary Committee in 1986, entitled, quote, "Ethnically Motivated Violence Against Arab Americans." The impetus for the hearing was the surge in violent hate crimes targeting Arab Americans, including the tragic 1985 murder of civil rights advocate Alex Oda. The climate was dangerous enough for FBI Director William Webster to warn that Arab individuals or those supporting of Arab points of view have come within the zone of danger. The importance of a hearing providing congressional oversight for a particular community is clear, but the hearing would also go on to serve as one of the key drivers of the passage of the Hate Crime Statistics Act of 1990. Like 1986, we have the opportunity today to make this hearing a beginning, a first step for much-needed reforms that will protect our Constitution, our civil rights, and our civil liberties, the very charge of this subcommittee. This hearing brings together three individual communities, though some overlap and we have some meaningful shared experiences, and a lot of solidarity. Lest we not forget that the first victims of deadly hate crimes post-9/11 were members of the Sikh community. However, the single most unifying factor is that our government has securitized its relationship with all of us. By viewing Arab Americans, American Muslims, and South Asian Americans through a lens of national security, the relationship becomes one of mitigating external threats instead of communities deserving of service and protection as any other group of Americans. And as a securitized community, our fellow Americans have come to view us differently too, sometimes have even targeted us for discrimination and bias-motivated hate. Nearly 3 years ago, a man was sentenced to 5 years in prison, convicted of a hate crime for threatening the life of AAI President James Zogby and our staff. He is the third man to go to jail for threatening us since 9/11. Most do not accept that we got here because of animus towards any of these communities, but rather because we have to keep America safe in what is commonly referred to as, quote, the war on terror. Our civil rights and civil liberties being violated in the name of national security, well, that is often used as a necessary price to pay for public safety. From the Patriot Act and its mass surveillance, to the Discrimination Special Registry Program of NSEERS, to rampant profiling, to watch lists of Americans of undetermined size without a redress process, to shockingly ignorant and bigoted FBI training material, to NYPD spying program, to harmful and ineffective countering violent extremism programs, to flying while Arab or Muslim, getting added to the lexicon of driving while black, to denaturalization programs, or finally to the Muslim ban. Our country has put in place practices that have violated fundamental rights and shown a lack of respect for our Constitution. Let's pause for a moment and consider some historical context. In 1980, Congress established a commission to examine the causes and impact of the shameful incarceration of Japanese Americans during World War II. They found the infamous Executive Order 9066 was not born of military necessity, but rather that, quote, the broad historical causes which shaped those decisions were race prejudice, war hysteria, and the failure of political leadership. 80 years after this astonishing violation of the rights of nearly 120,000 Americans of Japanese descent, it is useful for us to consider those three factors the report emphasized when examining the topic of our hearing today. In the case of Arab Americans, the prejudice is evident in the depiction of my community, from entertainment to news, and the polling we conduct of American attitudes regrettably bears that out. Second, we can easily arrive at war hysteria, quote unquote, through a war on terror that will not end until we defeat terrorism, and as such, can be held as permanent. Finally, we have seen the failure of leadership in at least two different ways. One, when our elected officials who sow fear by failing to speak out against hate and bigotry and instead traffic in it, and two, when our elected officials fail to provide the necessary oversight to prevent government abuses. Over the course of the last 20 years, the federal government's counterterrorism authorities have expanded significantly. My written testimony offers some specific recommendations, but now, 20 years since 9/11, is the right time to revisit so that we can course correct and pass legislation that provides security for all of us without compromising the rights of any of us. The protection of the fundamental rights of securitized communities like Arab Americans are certainly at stake, but so is our ability to protect the constitutional rights of all Americans and to maintain a free society. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today, and I look forward to your questions.